Welcome everyone. In the last session we have discussed about the practical case relating to the presentation of statement of financial position and statement of profit and loss. Let us discuss some of the application level cases that comprises of various cases of adjustments. This was the case that was mentioned in the last session where you were asked to find the solution for it. I hope some might have computed this case and prepared the statement of profit and loss and statement of financial position. Some might came across some of the doubts with regard to various adjustments or with regard to any of the items that stated in the trial balance. So keep your doubts and queries with yourself. Don't worry, we are going to discuss this case from the beginning to the end. So this is just a typical question where trial balance is given, associated additional information is given, you are asked to prepare final accounts. So we all know the final accounts comprises of statement of profit and loss, statement of changes in equity and statement of financial position. So you may get a doubt that how the statement of changes in equity comes, because we haven't learned about the concept of statement of changes in equity. We haven't dealt any of the cases with regard to statement of changes in equity. But from the final accounts point of view, there are statement of profit and loss, statement of changes in equity and statement of financial position. Apart from that, there are other statements also, statement of cash flows and other additional notes. But from our examination point of view, the three statements are important. And we haven't yet started the statement of changes in equity. But for the time being, I am just mentioning that statement of changes in equity. We will learn about the statement of changes in equity after this practical case. So right now you have to prepare only statement of profit and loss and statement of financial position. So first of all, let us begin with statement of profit and loss. We all know the statement of profit and loss has a peculiar pattern in which the title of the company and the profit and statement of profit and loss for the year ended specific date as mentioned in the question has to be shown, particulars, note number, current year balances and previous year balances. The first item which we are going to write is revenue from operations. So go through each of these items. How many of the items are coming under the category of revenue? For the easiest method, you go for the credit balances. Usually incomes will come in the credit side. But from the examination point of view, you just go through each individual items. So sales is given, and since there are no other net sales, we can select this sales as revenue from operations. 7,20,000. Now go through each individual item, make sure whether there is any incomes or revenues of the concern stated in the trial balance. Sales is already taken provision, all these items will not come, equity shares, debentures, reserve fund. Right now there are no other items that comes under the income category, so we can assume that there is no other income. So let it be dash. Now we can take the total. There is not much of a computation. We can, is from the initial glance itself, we can understand that total revenues is 7,20,000. Now let us go for the expenditure side or expenses. It's better to use the term expenses. Expenditure and expenses are different. Sorry. So let's go to the expenses side. Expense under expenses. First one is cost of materials, since it is not mentioned in any of the cases or items in the trial balance. We can go for the next one, that is purchases. Make sure whether there are any purchase returns given in the question or not. And remember, while writing down each individual item, make sure whether there are any adjustment relating to that particular item. Make sure that. So purchases 3,85,000. After that, next important item is changes in inventory. We know that there is a peculiar pattern for computing whether there is a positive value or negative value. Opening stock minus closing stock, that is 82,000 minus 32,000, you will get 50,000. After that, next item is employee benefit expenses. Make sure whether there are any computation with regard to employee benefit expenses. Employee benefit expenses include salaries, wages, and make sure whether there are any other items comes under the category. No, there are no other items. Before write it down, make sure whether there are any adjustments. Yes, outstanding wages. Outstanding wages. You have to add along with the existing wages. So let us bring a note on that. Employee benefit expenses include first one wages, 13,000 already here, and then there is an outstanding 7,000, so a total of 20,000. Salaries is 82,000. There are no other employee benefit expenses, so total employee benefit expense is 1,02,000. Show it here. Next one, finance cost. Finance cost, I believe you all know what is meant by finance cost. See, here there are one more thing. While dealing with the final accounts part, make sure whether there is any percentage items given in the trial balance. See, you can see that there is 8% preference share capital. If any additional information with regard to this percentage is given in the adjustment or not, still you need to find out the 8% of that particular preference share capital. So what is meant by 8% of preference share capital? That means dividend provided to that has to be provided by the company to the preference shareholders. Even if it is not mentioned in the question, still you need to find the dividend amount. Next one, 10% of debentures. 10% of debentures means you have to pay 10% interest for this 1 lakh rupees. Even and another thing, make sure whether there is any additional information given in the question or not. In the question, closing it is already taken. Provision to debenture interest due for 6 months. So debenture interest is due for 6 months. So first of all, you need to find what is the debenture interest for the entire period. So debenture interest for entire period is 1 lakh into 10%. You will get 10,000. And the additional information, it is mentioned that debenture interest due for 6 months. In 12 months, out of 12 months, 6 months interest is outstanding. So for the entire 12 months, the debenture interest is 10,000. So for the 6 months, that is half of the year, what is the interest rate? 10,000 divided by 2, it will be 5,000. So debenture interest 5,000 was already paid, because in the adjustment it is mentioned that interest due for 6 months. That means the next 6 months or the previous 6 months is already paid by the company. Company has to pay the next set of half year interest. So debenture interest includes 5,000, add outstanding 5,000, total 10,000. See, there is no information regarding debenture interest in the trial balance. There is no information regarding any debenture interest paid in the trial balance. Only information we have is, it in the trial balance it is mentioned that 10% is the debenture interest. And in the adjustments it is also mentioned that there is a outstanding interest payment of rupees 5,000 for the period. That is 6 months interest is due. See how the question is going through. Even though some items are not mentioned in the question, we have to find those hidden items. See, here debenture interest of rupees 10,000 is actually hidden. In the question it is not mentioned that there was a certain percentage of interest has to be paid. Out of that certain amount was outstanding. There is no such information. It is up to your logical understanding that when the certain percentage of certain item is given, you need to find the respective interest or dividend associated with it. Usually it will be there in case of loans, debentures, and case of preference share capital and equity share capital. Anyway, debenture interest 10,000. So our finance cost includes 10,000. After that, next one is depreciation. Make sure whether there is any depreciation provision specified in the question. In the adjustment, there are no other information, but in the trial balance, there is one item, depreciation on fixed asset 23,000. See, here depreciation is given directly in the trial balance. So we need not have to deduct the same from the fixed asset. while preparing statement of financial position. So let us show the depreciation amount 23,000. Next one, there are still some of the expenses we haven't taken under any of these heads. So let us bring together all those expenses, such as rent, audit fees, printing, says these three items. We haven't entered these items in any of these heads until now. So we can bring together all these heads under other expenses. So let's say add these three items, you will get 19,200. Show that 19,200 here. I think we have recorded almost all the expenses and incomes. Even after going through additional information, we have covered almost all the areas. Next, you need to find the profit during the year. I hope you all know how to find the profit during the year. Take the total of revenues and take the total of expenses. If you take the difference between total revenue and total expense, you will get profit before tax. Now you have to provide for taxation. Make sure whether there is any information regarding taxation. See in the additional information, it is mentioned that provision for taxation 50,000 for the current year. So deduct that 50,000 from the profit. So you will get 80,800. So this is the profit during the period. Now we have to distribute this to the shareholders, specifically the equity shareholders. So what is the total number of equity shareholders? 60,000 equity shareholders are there. But there is one issue. There is another set of shareholders are also there. That is 8% preference share capital is held by certain number of preference shareholders. So does this 80,800 can be directly distributed to the equity shareholders? You cannot, because we can share anything to the equity shareholders after distributing all the amount to the preference shareholders, or if there is any outstanding amount to the debentures, if there is any information regarding amount payable to the debenture holders, it has to be considered. Otherwise, you have to reduce the amount that is to be paid to the preference shareholders. So what is the dividend of preference shareholders? Here 3 lakhs rupees is given. 8% is the dividend has to be provided. So 3 lakhs into 8%, you will get 24,000. So before distributing this 80,800 to the 60,000 equity shareholders, first of all, out of 80,800, 24,000 worth of dividend has to be distributed. The remaining amount can only be distributed or shared among equity shareholders. So the computation will be earning per share is net profit available to the equity shareholders. Net profit available to equity shareholders means profit during the period minus preference dividend. So it will be $80,800 minus 24,000 divided by total number of equity shareholders. That is, each shareholder will get 95 paise for the profit or earnings earned by the concern. So this is how you have to prepare the statement of profit and loss. Next, let us go for the next statement. Statement of financial position, or we can simply say balance sheet for the period. Format for presenting the statement of financial position is almost similar to the format of the statement of profit and loss. Let us begin with assets. Under assets, we will start with non-current assets. Under non-current assets, first one is property, plant and equipment. So this is the question, and this was the statements we have prepared. Now check whether how many fixed assets are given in the question, or the property, whether the question is given the property, plant and equipment amount directly. Make sure which category is this. Since there is no information regarding property, plant and equipment directly given, find out the fixed assets in the question. Check each item, yes, plant and machinery, furniture. So these two are the fixed. Make sure whether there are any more fixed assets. No, there are no other fixed assets. And in the adjustments also, there are no other information regarding fixed assets. And one more thing, depreciation on fixed asset. So how we are going to deal that. See, property, plant and equipment consists of plant and machinery and furniture. Here depreciation on fixed asset, we can't take that because this depreciation is given directly in the trial balance. Anything directly given in the trial balance means it is already adjusted and we have to post it in the respective side. So depreciation is an expense and we already recorded that depreciation while dealing with statement of profit and loss. And you may think that in the previous cases and in the previous sessions we have discussed many cases about depreciation where we will show it as an expense is one side, and while preparing the balance sheet or a financial position we deduct the depreciation from the fixed asset. Yes, I agree with that, but all those steps were done when the depreciation detail was given as an additional information. Since the depreciation is directly given in the trial balance, we need not have to deduct it from the concerned asset. So here the property, plant and equipment includes 3 lakh plus 1 lakh, 4 lakhs. Show this 4 lakh in the property, plant and equipment side. Next is current assets. Before the current assets, there is one more item, goodwill. See, go through each item, you can see that there is, yes, goodwill worth of 7,50,000. It has to be shown directly. There are no further adjustment regarding that. And apart from goodwill, there is no information regarding other intangible assets. So we can go directly to current assets. Under current assets, there are items such as, first one, mainly the inventories. The inventory includes the amount of closing stock. So closing stock is directly given in the question. Show it 32,000. Next one, financial assets. Under financial assets, there are some categories. First one is trade receivables. I believe you all know what is meant by trade receivables. It is the other name for sundry debtors. So make sure whether there is debtors given 3 lakhs. So show the 3 lakhs amount here. After that, next one, cash or cash equivalents, means any cash in hand or cash at bank or bank balance. Make sure whether there is any information regarding any of these items. See, bank balance of rupees 13,800. Next is short-term advances. In the question it is given advance tax worth of rupees 10,000. It is already given. It is a sort of asset, so we have to show under short-term advances. Otherwise, the advance tax would have been mentioned in the brackets as a long term. If anything has to be dealt as a non-current or a current, in the usual practice we can easily identify the nature of the item, but in some cases the nature may be specified along with the particular item. Usually advance tax will be a short-term item. And we have almost included all the assets as per the details specified in the question. And make sure whether there are any adjustment regarding any of these items. Actually, each adjustment has to be dealt during each individual cases. Anyway, make sure whether you have left anything. So let us take the total of assets. You will get 15,05,800. Now let us go to the next side, that is a liability side. It begins with equity and liability. Under equity and liability, we will start with equity. So what are the details given in the question regarding equity? So since we have to show the computation here, I will show the question in this part because we have already completed this area. So now go for the capital part. See, equity capital is given, preference share capital is given. So we have to deal with the capital part because under equity we includes all the capital. So equity capital is 6 lakhs and preference share capital is 3 lakhs. And there is a certain pattern for writing down the capital. I hope you all know. Still I will show the computation. So we can take another note. Equity share capital, it begins with authorized capital where 1 lakh equity shares of 10 each, 10 lakhs. And issued and subscribed called up capital is 60,000, equity shares of 10 each, 6 lakhs. And 8% preference share capital of 3 lakhs, and that is total 9 lakhs. So you may get confused. In the question, equity share capital is 60,000 shares of 10 each. Then how come we have written 1 lakh equity shares of 10 each? Because if you go through the adjustments in the last line, see, authorized capital of the company is 1 lakh shares of 10 each. That is why I have mentioned here. 10 lakhs was the amount the company was planning to raise, out of which 6 lakhs by way of equity shares and 3 lakhs by way of preference shares, and total of share capital is 9 lakhs. So now we have to show total capital, that is the actual concept of that, is 9 lakhs. Next one is other equity. I believe you all know how to find other equity. There is certain computation for that. Let us go through each of these cases. First one, other equity includes reserves and surplus. So reserves, first of all, let us find out what are the reserves given in the questions, or what are the funds mentioned in the question. Are there any transfers to the reserve or anything like that? So first of all, we will start with reserve fund, go through each item, where are the categories that has to be included in this area. Reserve fund 80,000. So let us begin with the reserve fund 80,000. And there are no further information regarding reserves, and go through the adjustments, make sure whether there are any amount transferred to reserve. There are no such a thing. So under reserves there is only 80,000. After that, let us go for the surplus. Surplus includes, first of all, in the question, the profit and loss opening balance is already given 1,80,000. Show 1,80,000 here. After that, we have already computed the profit for the period 80,800. Show that amount here. And now go through each item. Is there any of the items we have missed? Usually we have found and recorded all the items. Now go for the additional information. Make sure whether there is any items you have left. See, provision for taxation appearing in the trial balance is the balance after all income tax liability for the year ended 31/3/2018. So there is a provision for taxation given in the question, that is 3,000. And the adjustment, it is mentioned that is the provision amount that is left after meeting all the tax liability. So do we have to maintain that amount? Because tax amount has been already met for the period. So this 3,000 with regard to the provision for taxation is actually a sort of savings, because already the tax liability is met during the year, and the remaining 3,000 is in the form of cash or whatever it is within the business. After remember, after paying all the tax liability and tax debt, this amount we have got as a balance figure, and it is actually considered as a savings, because we have paid all the tax liabilities and still we have got 3,000 rupees as a balance. So it is actually a sort of tax savings, and we have mentioned about the savings in tax with regard to any provision created. Whenever you come across a such item, you have to add that item along with the reserves and surplus. During the format discussion of reserves and surplus and provision, we have mentioned about that. So provision for taxation, that is rupees 3,000, it has to be added. So a total of 2,63,800 has been obtained from the way of reserves and surplus created. And out of this 2,63,800, we have used some amount for various purposes. We need to deduct those items. So what are the items that has been met out of this reserves and surplus? For that information, you have to go through each of the adjustment. Usually it will be mentioned in the adjustment part. So go through each of these items. outstanding wages is already met. Provision for taxation dealt, debenture interest dealt, provision for taxation 50,000 for the current year, we already dealt with that item. Directors propose a dividend of 3 per equity shares. So you have to pay equity shares or equity shareholders, we have to pay dividend for equity shareholders. And corporate dividend tax is 20%, we have to show that item also here. Say, okay, now we have got 2 items of the adjustment side. Now go through the trial balance, make sure whether there are any percentage factors. See, in the case of preference share capital, there is a percentage factor, and with regard to debenture, we already dealt that. And we will discuss about the debenture interest in the next category, because right now we are dealing with share capitals. So we will come to debenture part soon. See, here 8% preference share capital. I have mentioned earlier that whenever there is any percentage regard to, particularly with regard to share capital or any debentures, right now we are discussing about share capital. So we need to find the dividend regard or with regard to that particular share capital. So here you have to find out the dividend paid to the preference shareholders, dividend paid to the equity shareholders, and finally the corporate dividend tax. So let us find out. First one, this one we already dealt, that is the note with regard to that. See, first one is proposed preference dividend. Proposed preference dividend is 8% of 3 lakhs. We already computed that one, 24,000. Show that 24,000 here. Next, additional information, it was mentioned that the company has to pay rupees 3 per equity share. So what is the number of equity shares? 60,000 equity shares. So 60,000 into 3, 1,80,000. And finally, corporate dividend tax is percentage is already mentioned, 20% on dividend provided by the company. So how much was the dividend provided by the company? 24,000 on preference shares and 1,80,000 on equity shares. So total of these two, you will get 2,04,000. So now take the 20% tax on 2,04,000, you will get 40,800. Take the total of these 3 items, you will get 2,44,800. This amount was met, or these expenses or these payments was met out of 2,63,800. So what is the remaining reserves and surplus balance? That will be 19,000. And remember, there is a reserve fund we have already entered in the beginning. So 80,000 plus 19,000, 99,000. So the amount that comes under other equity is 99,000. I believe you have understand the concept. We have done some cases or computation with regard to that. If you have any queries, please do let me know. Now let us go to the another area, liabilities. Under liabilities, first one is non-current liabilities. Under non-current liabilities, the next one is financial liabilities. Under financial liabilities, you will include long-term borrowings. In that area, there is also some computation. That is, in the question, there is one long-term borrowings, that is 10% debentures. Remember, here is an interest rate associated with debenture, and in the adjustment it was also mentioned that debenture interest is due. So find the total amount that has to be paid to debenture holders. So debentures is 1 lakh and interest outstanding on debentures is 5,000, because the total debenture interest was 10,000, and out of 10,000, 5,000 was already paid and 5,000 was outstanding. So you have to add the outstanding along with the debentures. So 1,05,000, show this 1,05,000 in the debenture amount. After that, next heading is current liabilities. Under current liabilities, first one is financial liabilities. Financial liability includes trade payables, that means trade payables means creditors. So make sure creditors are mentioned in the question. 1 lakh, show that 1 lakh here. After that, next one is other current liabilities. Make sure whether there are any more items which we have left out. We have almost taken all the assets and liabilities. Go through the additional informations. See, outstanding wages of 7,000 we haven't shown yet. So other current liabilities includes outstanding wages 7,000. Show that amount. And finally, provisions. So while dealing with provision, you have to be very careful. Short-term provisions includes any sorts of dividend payments, any sort of corporate dividend taxes paid, and all other provisions on each item. So it includes proposed preference dividend, see 24,000, proposed equity dividend 1,80,000, corporate dividend tax 40,800, and finally provision for taxation. See, it was given in the adjustment. Total 2,94,800, show that amount in the short term provisions. And I believe we have recorded all the items that are mentioned in the question. So now take the total of equity or liability side, you will get 15,05,800. See, we have already got the total of assets, that is 15,05,800. See, asset side is same also. So this is how you have to deal with a practical case in which you have to prepare a statement of profit and loss and statement of financial position along with the certain types of adjustments. Go through it. If you have any queries regarding that, please do let me know. So let us discuss some other cases of adjustments. You might come across different types of adjustments in the additional information, and we have tried to cover almost all the adjustments you might come across. Here we will discuss some of the common items you might deal with in an examination or a test paper. So in an additional information, it is given that 1/10 of preliminary expense worth of rupees 56,000 to be written off. So how you are going to deal that? So 1/10 of preliminary expenses written off and the amount is given, how we are going to deal that? It is almost like the depreciation or amortization, especially the amortization concept, where you have to find the 1/10 of 56,000 and it has to be written off, just like the depreciation or an amortization aspects. So this is how you have to do the computation. 56,000 into 1/10, you will get 5,600. So this is the amount you have to write off from the preliminary expense. So how we are going to deal this amount? It is almost like how you are going to deal with a depreciation case. The same pattern is also followed here. If this adjustment is given in the adjustment side or additional information, you have to show this 5,600 in two areas. One in statement of profit and loss under the depreciation and amortization heading, and another in the statement of financial position, where you have to deduct this 5,600 from the preliminary expenses. But if this information is given in the trial balance, usually it will not happen, because in the trial balance there will not be any sentence like 1/10 of a preliminary expense written off. If it is given in the trial balance, you have to do like the depreciation which we have done in the last session. Next type. When percentage is given, there will be an adjustment for sure. Yes, exactly. In the question, if there is any percentage like 8% on preference shares, 10% on equity shares, or 12% on debentures, 5% on investment, whenever there is any percentage rate associated with any of the item, definitely there will be an adjustment, or else you need to find the interest. If it is with regard to debentures or any assets, you need to find the interest. If it is regard to any preference share capital or equity share capital, you need to find the dividend. So remember, when rate is given, you must find out amount associated with it. Usually it will happen in the case of debentures and investments. Not only debentures and investment, it also happens in the case of equity shares and preference shares. Next one, provision for doubtful debts. I believe you all know how the provision has to be dealt. Any provision given in the trial balance is considered as old provision. We have learned about it in the +1 classes. Any provision given in the adjustment is new provision. We all know that. So how we are going to deal that? In a statement of profit and loss, you will show the total of any amount if it is given in the trial balance, bad debts. If there is any further bad debts given under additional information, you will add it. If there is any new provision mentioned in the additional information, you will add it. Out of these three items, you have to deduct the old provision. This is how you have to show the amount of doubtful debts or bad debts in the statement of profit and loss or else profit and loss account. We have done numerous cases regarding that, and just refreshing your earlier knowledge. That's right. So that is one part. Next one, how you are going to deal these items in the balance sheet or statement of financial position. In the statement of financial position, you will deduct further bad debts and new provision from the debtors, because we can deduct from debtors only those values that is mentioned specifically in the additional information. We can't deduct all the bad debts or anything that is given in the entire question. Anything shown in the trial balance cannot be deducted from debtors. Amounts specifically mentioned in the additional information can be deducted from debtors while recording in the statement of financial position. So this is how with regard to provision for doubtful debts. If you have still doubts regarding how to deal with provision for doubtful debts, please refer module 1 sessions, in which we have discussed in detail how the provision for bad debts or how the bad debts has been dealt in a final accounts. Next one. But in the adjustment, it is mentioned that additional provision has to be created. Yes, that is another case. When you come across a question with regard to preparation of final accounts, there is no information regarding bad debts in the trial balance. There is no information regarding further bad debts in the trial balance. There is no information regarding new provision. It will not be like that. Anyway, let me come back. There is no information regarding creation of new provision. The only information that is given in the question is old provision. So, imagine such a question where you have given only an old provision. There is no other information. And in the adjustment, it is mentioned that additional provision has to be created. So imagine a case where these information are not there, only details regarding old provision. So in the adjustment, it is mentioned that the additional provision has to be created. Only that information will be given. Additional provision has to be created is the only details or information given in the question. In that case, there will be no old provision or new provision. Just find out the additional provision amount and add it with the previous amount given in the question. So how we are going to deal that? If such an adjustment category question comes before you in an examination, show only the additional provision in the statement of profit and loss. In the statement of financial position, there will be debtors. From debtors, you need to deduct the old provision and the new provision. So you may think that why this old provision is to be deducted from debtors, because old provision is an amount that is already mentioned in the trial balance. Anything that is mentioned in the trial balance has been adjusted appropriately. So why the old provision has to be taken here? Because here the adjustment was you need to create a new provision that certain amount has to be added along with the old provision. So now the new provision is the old provision amount plus the additional provision. That is why we have deducted the old provision out of debtors. Provide for taxation at 30%. Such an adjustment comes before you. How you are going to deal with it? It's very simple. You have to prepare a statement of profit and loss where you will find the profit before tax and take the 30% of that particular amount and deduct the tax amount from the profit. Then you will get the profit after tax. See, tax equal to profit before tax into 30% divided by 100. So this is how you have to deal with cases regarding provision for tax, because usually provision for tax will be given in percentage rates rather than amounts. If the amount is directly given, you can directly deduct from the profit. If not, you need to find the tax amount. So these are some of the common cases you may come across. We will discuss about another area. in the coming sessions. Until then, go through it. If you have any queries regarding that, please do let me know.